good morning or afternoon or wherever it is where you're listening. I am Melody Ann, your host of Author Nation Interviews. Author Nation is a community of authors where we help you take your idea to a published book and beyond. If you're looking for resources, you can check out authornation.online. I'm excited about today because we're going to be talking about book covers. This is so important. It's a make it or break it topic for your book sales. And so grab a bevy, get comfy, and let's chat with our guest, David Kudler, who is an expert provider of publishing services and a consultant to independent and self-published authors. For over 2 decades, he has worked as a developmental editor, ebook and print designer, and marketing consultant. He has all the pieces we need for this discussion today. And his mission is to help you turn your manuscript into a book that has exactly the impact that you desire. Welcome, David. So
Hey,
to kick things off, tell me a little bit more about your journey and how you got to this place of expert in the publishing world.
I was, as a young person, a writer and an actor, and like all writers and actors, I had a side gig, and that it was editing. I started editing magazine articles, whatever I could, and got along the way hired as the managing editor of the collected works of Joseph Campbell, who was a famous mythologist uh,
Mm.
back in the 20th century, and um, started out just basically working as a developmental editor, taking unpublished work and his. I mean, he was no longer with us, so I was taking his unpublished work and putting it together in book form. And then as we went further along, uh, they needed me to start looking at doing more design work and image research and a lot of other things that have to do with the larger question of publishing. Um, Somewhere around 2010, we realized we were in a position to create our own audio ebooks out of all of the books that we had. And rather than farm them out, the head of the foundation turned to me and said, "You're it." And so I suddenly found myself in the position of being an ebook designer, which was not something that I had trained to be up to that point, but it was a very explosive, wonderful time to become, an ebook designer. And I also then started doing audio and video and was working with the print designers and doing all of the things. And at a certain point, I realized I was a one-man publishing shop. And so I started Still Point Digital Press, which is my small micro publishing company and publishing services company. And so I realized, I was already doing book marketing. I was already doing design. I was already doing editing. I was putting together ebooks and print books and video and audio and all of it. So I thought I would share that expertise with as many people as I could, and that's what I've been doing.
That's amazing. Starting with, that's, I almost said Joseph Conrad. Joseph Campbell. I also love Joseph Conrad, but I
Me
also love
too.
Campbell. So,
Yeah.
yes, I love them both. So that's super exciting. That's amazing. So let's jump into our key topic, book covers. So, what are the key promises a book cover needs to make to the reader that are crucial for authors?
Well,
Extremely
that's a great question. I mean, because all of us probably, our moms told us that you can't tell a book by its cover, and it's great advice, except in book publishing, which that's what book covers are for,
Yeah.
is to let everybody know what's inside. And so what I tell my clients and people that I talk to is basically there are four basic promises that every cover needs to make. The first one is genre and subgenre, right? Basically, in the same way that you have, at a bookstore, a shelf that tells you, okay, well, these are the fantasy, this is paranormal romance, this is, how to whatever. Your cover needs to be able to tell a potential reader, this is what the genre and um, subgenre, I mean, getting down to specific, things like, I mean, my oh, other shoulder. There we go. I write young adult historical fantasy set in Asia. Well, my covers need to be able to say that, and I think they do a good job. The second thing that they need to be able to communicate, which is related but not the same, is tone. Everybody, we all understand what the tone of our book is. Is it funny? Is it dark comedy? Is it light comedy? Is it romantic comedy? Is it romance? Is it serious? Is it what is it? Because just genre and subgenre aren't going to communicate that, but you need to make sure that the outside has the same tone as the inside. The third thing is subject matter, which sounds the same, but it is not. The way I like to describe it, is uh, if you've seen the movie The Princess Bride, um, is it a kissing book? What happens in the book? If it's nonfiction, what is the specific subject matter that you're going to be focusing on? So getting very particular about that. The cover should let people know that. And the fourth thing is brand, which is something that as book publishers, as authors, as marketers, we all need to think about. Uh, what is the brand and how do we tie all of the various books together in a series, or even if it's just as an author brand, or as if you're a publisher like I am, as a publishing brand, what are the things that, are going to tie it together? And so those are the four promises, right?
Yeah.
Genre and subgenre, tone, subject matter, and brand.
Yeah, I'd like to dig into a couple of those.
Yeah.
So, genre. Sometimes authors, yeah, this is my genre. It's a coming of age memoir, to give an example.
Yeah.
But I don't want to look like everyone else out there. So where's that balance between, honoring the genre and the subgenre and the topics and breaking away from all the other covers so yours is noticeable?
Of course. The thing you need to do is spend a lot of time really researching your niche, right? You need to spend time going on Amazon and Barnes and Noble online, going into whatever your local wonderful independent bookstore is locally, going into the library, and you need to get as close to your subgenre as you can and look through all of the books that are doing well in that subgenre. And then you start looking for elements that are common to them. Is there a color palette? It's science fiction, it tends to be very cool and dark, right? Romance, it tends to be very warm. Um, if it's a thriller, it tends to be very high contrast. Uh, Memoir and mystery, and I mean, there will be things that are much more soft focus. Are there tropes that keep popping up in, again, going back to science fiction? Ray guns and spaceships and you know things like that. Um, if it's a traditional romance novel, it's going to be a man with a bare chest. That sort of thing pops up a lot. You don't have to use the exact elements, but you have to be conscious of what those elements are. And if you decide to not go in the direction of the traditional palette, the traditional tropes that are going to identify the subgenre to a reader who's just looking at, a page of little thumbnail-sized covers on a list, on a search list, they'll be able to look and go, ah, that looks like what I want. What that means is you need to make sure that it doesn't completely ignore everything, but it can't look exactly the same. My adventure series here, there was when this books came out, there was a whole series of um, fantasy, historical fiction trope of woman with sword and a tattoo on her back. There were like 30,000 of those covers. And so I said to the gentleman who designed my cover, I was too close to the book and knew that I couldn't design it myself. And
Good.
so I, said to him, I want a sense of mystery. I want a sense that it's Japanese and that it's, got all of these things. So he, in fact, tied together a lot of the things that are fairly traditional, they tropey things. Girl with a sword. I don't know if you can see the sword there, but she's in negative space,
Mhm.
right? And actually, she's not there, and there's no tattoo down the back and all of that. He also did a great job. You can absolutely read the title at thumbnail size, right?
Yes.
You can, sort of see what's going on in it. All of those things are very important. You need to make sure that the cover reads not just at the, full scale, holding it in your hand size that you'd see at a bookstore, but as I said, in that thumbnail size, which is the one that most people will see first when it shows up in a search on Google or Amazon or another bookstore.
Yeah. Brilliant. And I can read it from here,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So
I
it's
thought you
it's
did a
tiny in
pretty
the background on my screen, right?
yeah.
So well done. So the next thing I want to jump into, and it reminds me, I'm looking at those two books, and I can only see the one, but I can see another one just kind of behind it.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's branding.
yeah. And so you talked about brand, and so brand. If you think about, a nonfiction author who has a business and they're trying to
Of course,
connect them, or an author who writes in mystery and YA fantasy and something else, and they're
sure,
trying to have this author brand. Or in your case, I'm assuming this is a series of books, and so
it
you're
is.
branding the series. So, can you talk a little bit more about the intricacies of brand for authors?
There are a number of elements that you can use to create a brand. The obvious and easy one is color. Gets used a lot. Staying with jewel tones or cool colors or warm colors. Um, this series is about it takes place over 4 seasons, and so this is winter and this is spring, and the summer one is coming out, and it's got a gold circle so that each of the seasons is represented, but they tie together, and that's the other part that you can use is layout, right? In
Mhm.
each of the cases here, there's a circle in the center with a girl in negative space with a sword. In the case of a lot of, uh, uh, when I'm working with clients, when I was working with the Campbell Foundation, we made sure that Campbell's name was always in the same place, that there was a logo that we had on every one of our books that always was in the same place, that the colors uh, were highly, in those cases, highly saturated. Sometimes you want to go in the opposite direction. You want them to be very muted, but that the colors work together. Um, you can also look at typeface, and especially with if you're not dealing with a series, if you're dealing with a series of books in different genres, even if you look at specifically the author name and have that be consistent across your
Mhm.
different color covers, same place, same typeface, maybe playing with it in similar ways, it will let a potential reader know, hey, yes, this is a cozy mystery. Well, here's a science fiction, collection of science fiction short stories, but I can see it's the same name, same typeface, and it lets me know that that in fact this is the same person.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes
So those
perfect.
are, the big ones are, yeah, typeface, color, and an overall layout.
Yeah.
And again, look at what other people have done for
Mhm.
ideas and for what people are going to expect, from if you want to create a brand like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So keep something consistent, and the closer it is together. So, for example, if it's a series, like a trilogy, you know, when you talk about consistency, you want more to be consistent than if you're an author who writes mystery and fantasy.
Yeah,
Then you need less to be consistent, but you still need something to be consistent.
it
Brilliant.
it's really good. And I'm not a big believer in using, and people disagree with me. This is
Yeah.
off the subject of covers, but still branding. Pen names.
Right.
Um, I am a big believer in not having more pen names than you need. If
Right.
you're somebody who writes children picture books and erotica, you need 2 separate pen names for those,
I
right?
know an author who does that. And
I
it's,
do too. I publish one. So, um, but if you are somebody who's, I mean, there are people who believe that, if you're writing sweet romance and slightly steamy romance, you should have completely different names and they shouldn't be identifiable. I have an author who wrote some of the erotica that I publish, erotic romance, really, and then wanted to write a series of Regency romances and didn't want the two to be confused because they're not really the same. I mean, it's just slightly different. Also, wanted to make sure that we could advertise the Regency romances and not have them, the advertisers, outlets think that it was going to be erotic romance. So the pen name in the erotic romance was KD West, and we, for the Regency romances, did Katie West, and it works. That way people are able to see across, same person,
yeah.
but so that's the kind of thinking that you need to look at. How can you give as much information at that first view to a reader, to a potential reader, as possible so that they then click or pick up the book if they're at a store,
Yeah.
uh, and actually look. And then you go to, we were talking before about title and subtitle and, the blurb, the description, the back cover copy, if it's, in a bookstore. All of that needs to have the same set of promises that it makes and keeps. I mean, make sure that if you make the promise that it's going to be a lighthearted comedy, there's nothing worse than opening a book thinking it's going to be upbeat and happy and having it be depressing and scary, right? We've all
Yeah.
had that experience. So make sure that what you promise in all of those elements, the cover, the title, especially the book title, and especially if you're in nonfiction, book title is a great place to be very explicit about this is what problem I'm going to solve for you, or this is what story I'm going to tell you, what information you're going to get. Um, Keywords,
Yeah.
right? Then the same thing is true in the description, where you need to be uh, very, if you are interested in SEO, search engine optimization, the title, subtitle, and the description need to be optimized for that,
Yeah.
because not only will they need to be something that hits for somebody who's just reading through quickly or carefully, but they also need to be for the search engines that are looking books about whatever it is your book's about.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you. Thank
They
you.
all have to tie together. That's basically, which is difficult. I mean, it's hard to make all of that happen, but it's the reason that uh, books that really click that find an audience and really resonate with that audience, they're able to do all of those things.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's really good. I Okay, so if you're out there listening and you want to learn more about David, it's davidkudler.com. Or if you would like to get some publishing support, you can speak to David or find David at stillpointdigital.com. Now, David, I don't want to wrap up until we've talked a little bit about your book, Inside the Box. And so in the book, you mentioned that an ebook is like a website in a box. Maybe this is part of the title, Inside the Box. So
Yes.
can you break down this analogy for our
So
audience and explain this?
it's literally true.
Okay.
But it also, I think, is a good metaphor for what an ebook is. Ebooks literally are a package, a software package that inside of it has nothing more than a bunch of HTML web pages and then a number of sort of helper files that tell it what goes where, how it's supposed to look, what order the chapters are in, that sort of thing. And so if you are interested in creating an ebook that looks the way you want it to look, as opposed to just being all Helvetica or whatever, um, then it really can help to get a very basic understanding of what the code is uh, inside the box. And so that was what I put together. It's my little, quickie introduction to HTML, cascading style sheets, which is the stuff that tells web pages how to look the way they're supposed to, and all the rest. And
Right.
it was a lot of fun to put that together, actually.
Sounds like it. So if somebody is listening and would like to get their hands on this book, how can they do that?
Well, you can buy it at your favorite bookstore. You can also come to stillpointdigital.com. And if you, or davidkudler.com, which is actually my page on the same website. But there's a subscription. And if you subscribe, I will send you that ebook.
Brilliant. All right. And I will make sure that link is in the description as well. David, before we wrap up, is there any final piece of advice or insight you would like to share?
Um, I think it's actually a two-parter. So basically, make your book as good as you can make it. That means the language, that means the structure, uh, as one developmental editor to another. Uh, it means the design. It means all of the work that goes into releasing it and marketing it. Make sure that's the first part. But the second part is there has never yet been a perfect book. I have never, ever seen a book that didn't have at least one typo in it. At this point, they become features, right? At a certain point, if a book is well established, they become part of what's wonderful about the book. So do the best you can, and then release it out into the world, and know that there will be things that you will have to change. The wonderful thing about contemporary publishing, when I was talking to one of my first clients, I said, "Well, digital publishing means never having to say you're finished." Okay.
Okay.
Because it's used to be that you would have to wait for your print run of 3,000 to be sold in order to reprint, and you'd have to make any, changes.
Yeah.
But now, if I realize, oh my gosh, I called the wrong character I called the character by the wrong character's name here. Somebody points it out to me, or I find it. I can go and change the ebook and the upload the PDF for the print. And then the next time, the next person who buys it will get the new version. And
Exactly.
so, as much as that also means we never get to just rest on our laurels, it also means that you don't have to be quite as precious about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. David, thank you for joining me today.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate all
It's
your
been a
advice.
pleasure.
Thank you. All right. If you're listening out there, where did I go? If you're listening out there, which I know you are, I want to remind you about the community, AuthorNation.community. It is the community for you if you have an idea that you want to turn into a published book. So we offer even writing sessions, whatever you're looking for, it's probably there. And we value your feedback and your support. So if you've enjoyed this episode, which I have immensely, take a moment to leave a comment or review it and share it with others who you think it might find valuable. So in other words, anyone who's publishing a book who needs a book cover should be listening to this episode. Send it on to them and keep writing, keep creating, keep sharing your stories with the world. All right. Thank you so much.